Hello, my name is Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today we're talking about de-stress and stress relief, a non-dual approach. Now first let's talk about what is stress. Fundamentally, what is stress? If you look up in WebMD or other sources for the common, high stress or stress causers, there's loss of a job, death of a family, traumatic event, be it natural disaster or crime against self or loved ones, huge financial obligations, divorce. They mention all this stuff, but all of this stuff is boiled down to fundamentally, we don't want what is. We're resisting reality. We're holding our ground and trying to fight reality. Now, there's some other lists in the list that are on the positive side. They mention a baby, a marriage, moving to a new home. These are also stressors. But these aren't things we don't want, but they are large-scale changes. And so we're having, there's a fear of the unknown, there's huge change. Fundamentally, most people don't like huge change, and they resist change. And so both whether you want it or don't want it, what it is a coming to terms with reality and a resistance of reality, trying to slow it down or change it in some way. It is an avoiding, resisting, denying reality in some way. That is what causes stress, is this resistance. What is reality? Well, in a non-duality, reality, what is simply the self. Everything is the self. There's only the self. And so fundamentally, we are resisting the self. We are resisting that which is not other than us. And this will become more important when we talk about some of the two main approaches of stress relief and de-stressing. But for now, let's leave it at that. The two approaches, and they're not really two approaches, they're very much the same thing, just different flavors. And some people like the flavor of one versus the other. Now the first one is a absolute, complete, unconditional surrender. Just completely surrendering, yielding, giving up. This is reality. This is what it is for as long as it is. Now I can make actions and I can do things to try to influence how things will change in the down the road in the future. But this is what is, and there's no point in resisting and denying reality. Reality always wins. And it is only causing stress when we're trying to hold our ground against reality, to resist reality. We're not going to win. And we're just fighting because we can't come to terms with reality. And so the first approach is simply to surrender. Now I am kind of reminded of, there's a pre-story in the front of the book, Illusions by Richard Bach. And he talks about a little river life form. There's a bunch of them clinging onto the rocks in this river that's sweeping over them constantly. And they're resisting. And he never says it outright, but you could tell they're all kind of stressed. As they're also fighting reality. And then fearing what happens if they're pulled off the rock, and so they're always clutching for dear life to stay where they're at. And of course, it's impossible to stay where you're at. Everything changes. Everything is temporary. And if we resist that fact, there's stress. But as these life forms are in the river, one day starts talking about, well, maybe it's not so bad if we let go. What happens downriver? And the other life forms are like, no, that's a bad idea. It's death. It's horrible down there. they just went on and on about it's a bad idea. And he ignored them all, and one day lets go and goes floating along downstream. And he finds it's not so bad. It's actually fairly pleasant in comparison. And he's floating along, and as he's floating along, he sees another group of similar life forms, and he kind of guides himself down and lands among them. And all the other ones clutching are in awe. They're like, a Messiah has come. He has come down from heaven. and this life form's like, well, no, I'm not a god. I'm not, I'm just like you. It's not so bad to let go. Just go. Just let go. And it's an interesting little story. But in the end, he's misunderstood, and he lets go and continues on. But it's an interesting little story. But that's the way we are against reality. Everything is constantly changing. Everything is impermanent. So reality is like a flow. And we're trying to hold our ground against this flow. And that is what causes stress. That is stress. Fighting reality constantly. And so if you lose your job, which I have several times, you just accept it, embrace it, fully surrender to it. Right? This is what is. I'm currently without a job. And instead of being resisting to it, you surrender to it and embrace it, and from there go, well, what can I do now? And this kind of brings us to the second, which I mentioned earlier, which some people will like the flavor of this one better, is harmony. As there is only the self, and there's only one reality, a way to de-stress and relieve stress is to realize where and how you're being dissonant, and instead consciously, actively try to harmonize. Try to harmonize what you're doing. So again, if you lose your job, you're trying to harmonize. It's like, okay, I'm without a job. It's not so bad. It frees up my time. I can maybe look for better opportunities. Maybe it wasn't that good of a job in the first place. I mean, I remember a job I had lost not long ago. It was not a very good environment. They treated, their employees horribly. They overworked them. There was no work-life balance. And so, losing that job, it's like, well, now I've got time to look for another job, because the other one overworked you so much you just didn't have time to look for work even if you wanted to leave. And so now I have got time to look for something better. And you kind of harmonize with it. You try to act cooperatively and collaboratively with what is. You start moving with the subtle flows. And so, you look around for work, you start seeing networking events or job fairs, and as you see them, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to those. This is what you need to do to look for work. You reach out to potential employers, companies you really like, yada, yada, yada. It is trying to not be dissonant with reality. It is a ceasing to be dissonant, and instead trying to be harmonious and move with. Kind of like great dancers. If you think of great dancers, TV, stage, whatever. Two dancers are dancing together. they're not pushing and pulling each other about. That's not the way dancing works. Really, they flow together. There is a almost intuitive moving together. And that is what you try to do with reality, with life, is you dance with life. You move with it. And try to, harmonize with the tune, what's going on. And in this harmony, there won't be, dissonance isn't heard, dissonance isn't felt. And this lack of dissonance, will basically be the sign of stress basically being gone. Because the dissonance itself is stress. The dissonance with life, with what's going on, is stress. And so if we harmonize with it, we are harmonizing with reality, with what is, with change. We're harmonizing with change. We're going with it. We're dancing with it. When you in this scenario, there's no stress. If you're pushing and pulling your partner in the dance, there's stress, because each want to go their own way and they're pushing and pulling, and so there's this conflict and fight going on. There's this dissonance as they're trying to dance. That's stress. But if the two are in sync and intuitively are dancing and together, there's a flow. They're not pushing and pulling, they are flowing together. And so flow together with life. In both of these instances, there's just the self. And so you're really surrendering to the self or harmonizing, ceasing to be dissonant with the self. There's just the self. There's just reality. There's no other. I mean, part of the problem that makes stress arise is there's a me that can be separate from reality, and the me can fight reality. That's what causes stress. As long as there's a me that can fight what is, there's stress. And so I guess the third approach, which I'll throw at the end, which is basically awakening, enlightenment, is to see through the illusion of me, the shattering of the illusion of me, which is what enlightenment is, has the effect of de-stressing and relieving stress from life, because there's no longer a me to fight reality. There's no longer a me trying to hold its ground against what is. There's simply what is. There's simply reality. And it's no longer, there's no longer a dissonance or a conflict with reality, because you are reality. There is nothing else. And so although I mention surrender and harmony first, that's just for everybody, seekers, whatever. But to truly see the cessation of stress would really involve a shattering of the illusion of me, seeing through this fake me that thinks it could fight reality in the first place. And then even after awakening, not all conditioning falls away, of course. There's still some little residual. And at times, a little stress will arise. And after awakening, after enlightenment, anytime stress arises, you realize it's not whatever's going on in life. It's not that is causing you stress. It is the me or some conditioning here that is causing the stress. There's a complete responsibility here for causing the stress felt by the body. It's not whatever is happening. Other things in the world don't cause you stress. You cause yourself stress. And so anytime a little bit of stress arises, a lot of times this actually calls out the resistance within my mind. It calls out the resistance as a flag, and as soon as it's seen, it kind of dissolves. Now at times, I'll feel a little resistance to something, because I know that, like that one job where they were really abusing and overworking their employees, I could feel at times a little stress coming up just because of the deadlines were so unrealistic. And anytime I felt a little bit of stress arise, I just had to let it go and remind myself I can only do what I can do. You can only do what you can do in the amount of time you have. No more, no less. And I'll do the best I can and let the chips fall where they may. And that letting go does relieve the stress. And I worked there a long time under those conditions, and usually not very stressed. I mean, at times when you got a boss or something breathing down your neck, but again, that's a resistance and thinking that there shouldn't be someone breathing down your neck. And so, it's coming to terms with what is and not resisting it and working with it. And in the end, some subtle held conditioning was dissolved by this role. Because in this environment, I hadn't been in one like that, ever. It brought up a little bit of conditioning of how I thought things should be, and then I was able to let that stuff go. I didn't have to think that I shouldn't have a boss breathing down my neck and micromanaging me, and I shouldn't have all this. I'm like, they're paying me to play this game the way they want it played. And I do the best I can, and that's it. And of course, in the end, they didn't think I was doing enough. And then I was let go, and then I had time to look for a better job. There was, I would think, very little stress compared to what it would have been like in my earlier days before awakening. I mean, I remember the first job I lost before awakening. Yeah, it was highly stressful. This job and this, being let go was relatively not very stressful. And so there is this coming to terms with what is, as it is, fully accepting, embracing, being with it, dancing with it, and yielding to its movements in the dance. Because it's not like you get to lead constantly. That's not the way dancing works. But if you have any questions, comments, please post below. If you think someone might enjoy the video, feel free to share. If you like my videos, please subscribe and turn on the notifications so you're notified of future videos. But until next time, thank you much.